Hello everyone, and I'm going back to the Dragon Age 2. I previously tested the first one like a year ago, and recently I finished this one for myself, so I thought maybe I should test it. Now, going quickly to the settings. 4K resolution, of course, full screen mode, renderer is DirectX 11, maximum graphics detail, which is very high. Now for anti-aliasing, as always, for all my games, I use 4x MSA as absolute maximum, and it's nice that they included anisotropic filtering to 16x and no need to mess with the Nvidia graphics drivers. Now the only option I disabled is high quality blur, and high resolution textures is of course enabled. The same as in my Dragon Age 1 video, I'm going to test few scenarios here as well. Now the first one is going to be just after you create your own character, and basically still an introductory section of the game. So it's littered with tutorials, hints and stuff like that. So I'm not going to stick with this one for long due to all that happening, which impacts mostly 0% lows. And it's not the only game that's doing that. It's not really gameplay related, so it can be a little bit misleading, I would say, if you just look at those statistics and nothing else. Despite only 2-year difference between Origins and Dragon Age 2, this one is way better optimized in terms of functionality and technical aspect, like bugs, compatibility with modern software and stuff like that. So while I had to use few mods and fixes for the original, for this one it's pretty much plug and play. I think the only one I had to do was to disable overlay from EA app, and that's about it. I launched the game, the UI scales with 4K resolution, which is very nice and which was also absent in the original, and overall it's pretty good experience. The game itself is considered quite, I would say, a black sheep, maybe looked down upon by its fanbase, and from one standpoint I can understand why, because it's mostly just a cut down version of the Origins. And on the other hand, it's a little bit more streamlined, so the extreme difficulty spikes which Origins used to have, which were also very annoying and frustrating, are kinda gone. In some areas it's a little bit spiky, but overall it's much better experience in that regard. At least to me, it's way less frustrating. It's a little bit less complicated. It still has all the tactics and combat is very similar, but the game itself definitely steered off of its original D&D combat and mechanics, and personally I don't really mind it. I can understand others which are upset about that, but it's not really an issue for me. So it's mostly just a subjective thing, I would say. Unlike the Origins, which I tested before, it doesn't really have all those CPU heavy hotspots. So I tried getting into Hightown, which should be most CPU demanding area in the game, but it's not really any different than any other location, which is interesting. It's supposed to have way more AI and NPCs, but it seems it doesn't really have an effect on the CPU. So while it's still here in the video, it's not really a big deal, so I thought maybe I should still include that as well. Now the last two parts are going to be the Wounded Coast, which is open world area, and the other is going to be just a random dungeon which I found in my playthrough. And in the meantime, I would like to talk a little bit more about the game. In my opinion, the absolute worst thing about this game are the reused locations, which starts to get very noticeable after like first 14 hours of the game, and sticks out like a sore thumb later on. If you played the first 12-14 hours of the game, you basically explored every possible location inside the game, and after that you'll revisit same areas again and again and again, which gets tiring very fast. And for me, it took me around 58 hours to finish the game, including all the DLCs. So without that, it's maybe 45 hours, but still, it's way too long for how much content it has, at least in my opinion. If it was a little bit shorter, like 24 hours or 30 hours, it would be way better. Also, I'm pretty sure that this game originally was intended as a spin-off of the Dragon Age, and execs decided that it should be called as Dragon Age 2. Now, it does have quite a few reappearances of old characters from originals. It's mostly just a different story for a different character, and it barely justifies as a second game in my opinion. It's not really a continuation of the first one, it's just a side story, if you can call that. And yeah, getting back to reused content, especially maps, it's very obvious that this game was made in 2 years and it was definitely rushed. Although the game still overall, it's a solid game in my opinion. It's just that it could be so much better if it had more time and more content. The maps, the reused locations are the worst in this one, and if only it was better utilized in that area, it would be so much better game. But, well, it is what it is, I guess. One more thing that I completely forgot to mention is the GPU utilization, which might indicate that the CPU is the bottleneck, but it's not really the case. It's not the first game I'm seeing this behavior, so games like Payday 2 and Rainbow Six Siege also has this strange GPU utilization. So while it might look like a GPU is not fully utilized, it really is. How do I know that? Is because it's constant. Typically with CPU limitations, you would see the GPU utilization jumps quite dramatically from maybe 70% in one area and maybe 90% in other area, or even just a viewing angle can make that difference. But here it's just a solid 80 or 82% or about, which basically indicates that just utilization and reporting is not really truthful, if I can call that. So just be aware. And yes, this is not a bug. This game is extremely GPU demanding, especially at DirectX 11 with all its features enabled. So back when it was released, it absolutely crushed the error-correct GPUs, even at very reasonable resolutions like 1680 by 1050, and none of single core GPUs managed to hit even 60 FPS. Most of them stopped at about 45 FPS at such low resolution. So you can imagine that years later, at 4K resolution with all things maxed out, my 3090 barely manages to stick above 100 FPS. And back then only Crosshair or SLI configs managed to hit about 60 or above FPS. And because of that, it's going to be interesting to test and visit the Dragon Age Inquisition, which was released in 2014, I think, or so. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say, that I wanted to cover. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with the gameplay. As always, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye for now.
There should be more further in. That should be enough.